Hello, and welcome to your lesson on Ivan Pavlov with behavioral and social learning theories. I'm going to start with a quote by Ivan Pavlov. "Perfect as the wing of a bird may be, it will never enable the bird to fly if unsupported by the air. Facts are the air of science. Without them a man of science can never rise." And this is true with education as well. They need that excellent foundation of a great education for students to flourish in their older grades. So who exactly is Ivan Pavlov? Well, he was born in Russia on September 26, 1849. Pavlov worked through his great education and eventually became a very famous Russian physiologist. Pavlov devoted his life to the study of physiology and sciences, making several remarkable discoveries and ideas. Pavlov worked to unveil the secrets of the digestive system. And with this working for the digestive system, he created a very popular experiment with a bell dog's salivary glands and food, and this became known as conditioned reflex. So what exactly do we want to know from this lesson? What are our objectives? So I want you to take a chance to write these questions down so that way you can answer them throughout the lesson. What is classical conditioning and how can it be evident in a classroom? What are some types of positive reinforcement and punishment in the theory of behaviorism? What is the main idea of the social learning theory? And in what ways do you use these theories in your own classroom? So again, take a chance to write these down so you can answer them throughout the lesson. We're going to start with classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is a learning process that occurs through associations between an environmental stimulus and a naturally occurring stimulus. Now this is when Pavlov created the experiment of the dogs, the food, and the bell. In that experiment, the naturally occurring stimulus was the food. The dogs were presented with food, so they began salivating. The environmental stimulus is what he added. This would be the bell. Every time the food was presented in front of the dogs, the bell rang. Soon, he classically conditioned these dogs to every time they heard the bell, they began salivating because they assumed food was on its way. Now this also happens in a classroom. We can classically condition our students. We can have jobs and have them know exactly what they're supposed to do. In the morning when they enter, they know exactly the protocol for how they're supposed to behave, what they're supposed to do, and what their pattern of the day is. Now there are three common types of classical conditioning. There is generalization, discrimination, and extinction. And we'll dive a little deeper into these. Now, generalization. This is when a student who performs poorly on a math test generalizes that fear to physics and chemistry because the tests are similar. When he's scared of one, he's scared of the other because he thinks he's going to perform poorly on all of them. Then there's discrimination, which is the opposite of generalization. A student who performs poorly on a math test knows that there's a clear difference between math and then physics and chemistry, so does not fear those other tests and takes them with a clean slate. Then there is extinction. This is the process of unlearning a learned response. For example, if the student repeatedly does great on his math test, that fear of taking math tests will eventually go away. Next, there is the theory of behaviorism. This is the theory that the behavior of a student is shaped through positive or negative reinforcement. Now, we all use positive or negative reinforcement in our classrooms. It just depends on when you need it. However, there's a difference between reinforcement and punishment. There's positive and negative reinforcement, and there's positive and negative punishment. Now, reinforcement increases the probability that a behavior will occur. However, punishment decreases the probability that a behavior will occur. So here's the difference between reinforcement and punishment. We'll start with positive reinforcement. The student is praised for asking a question, so they ask more questions. We all do it as teachers. We encourage that great behavior and the good questions and the excellent reading skills. So they want to do it more and more. They want to please their teacher. Now, negative reinforcement is when a student is tired of getting nagged about doing his homework. So he does his homework just so the nagging stops. Positive punishment is if a teacher frowned when a student asks a question, the student will not ask many more questions. We want to reinforce the good behavior, not take it away. Negative punishment is when a misbehaving student is removed from the class. Now again, we need these in certain situations, but it's up to you as the teacher as to know what kind of reinforcement or punishment you are using. The social learning theory. Social learning theory states that students learn by observing or imitating other people. Well, this is very true in classrooms. Students need that social observation or that observational learning and modeling to learn from other kids. This works really well if you have any monolingual students. I have 2 monolingual students in my class this year, and they are learning English because of their interaction and observing other students in the class who are speaking English. In classrooms, modeling others is a great way for students to learn. This is also good if you use the document camera up on your smartboard. If I'm teaching handwriting, I model how I want them to do the letters, and they imitate me, so that way they can gain that muscle memory and use their handwriting and grow into great handwriting. Now, what did you learn from this lesson today? We're going to reference back to our objectives. What did we learn? What is classical conditioning and how can it be evident in a classroom? So again, classical conditioning is when you have one environmental stimulus and then a naturally occurring stimulus. We all use this in the classroom. This is when we condition our students to know how to behave and when to do certain things. What are some types of positive reinforcement and punishment in the theory of behaviorism? Now again, reinforcement and punishment are 2 very different things, and there's positive and negative to each. So we need to make sure we're using the right style in our rooms. What is the main idea of the social learning theory? The main idea of the social learning theory is imitating and observational learning. This is a great thing for students to do in a classroom. It's a great way for them to learn. And in what ways do you use these theories in your classroom? Well, I'd love to know.